Welcome to the Solid Verbal. The Solid Verbal.
Come after me! I'm a man! I'm 40!
I've heard so many players say, well, I want to be happy. You want to be happy for a day? Eat a steak.
It's that woo-woo!
And now, Dan and Ty.
Welcome back to the Solid Verbal, boys and girls. My name is Ty Hildenbrandt. That man over there on the other side of the line, his name is Dan Rubenstein in New York City. Sir, how are you?
I'm Dan Rubenstein, as far as you know. I'm good, Ty. Life is good. It's, God, I'm 5 weeks out.
Whoa, yeah, I was going to say.
Wedded bliss.
Are there any nerves? Are you getting nervous?
No, Ty. Things are coming together pretty nicely. So I got my suit, and I need to go get a new shirt. I'm going to get a nice new fitted dress shirt. But no, Ty, the draft is this week, so I'm very excited that we're having Josh Norris on from NBC and Rotoworld. You know, spring has sprung, Ty. Life is just grand. A
fantastic follow in the Twitter sphere if you're into such things. Don't forget, you can follow us at Solid Verbal, but our guest of honor this evening is at Josh Norris. We'll bring him on momentarily to talk about all things NFL draft. What are you doing for the draft? You got anything special planned?
Ty, I'm glad you asked. We here at SBNation.com, it's a website, are doing a 4 to 5 hour, depending on how long the draft lasts, we're doing a big live draft party. So it's a giant set, all of SB Nation, the studio here in New York. We're going to be doing some fun things. We're going to have multiple desks and sets, and it's going to get very strange. We're going to have a pizza topping draft at a certain point.
Okay.
Do you know what I think it's called knocker ball?
No, never heard of that in my life.
It's those big puffy ball suits that you just run into each other wearing.
Okay. Yeah,
they're not sumo suits, but they're like the big. I think it's called knocker ball.
Okay.
So we're gonna have fun with those. I think Jeff Schwartz, former Oregon Duck and New York Giant and Minnesota Viking, great friend of the show. He was on the Scheme Theme Month last year. I think he's gonna just hurt people.
I was gonna say he will win the knocker ball contest.
So he is. I mean, he was a little bit beat up throughout his career, but he is fully healthy right now.
Yeah. So even at like half strength, I would think he would still be able to run roughshod through the office.
Yeah, he was here last week, and 6'7", 330 is very real.
Yeah.
It's a very tangible thing. So we're going to have fun with that. We're going to have all sorts of fun. So I would strongly recommend SBNation.com, YouTube.com/SBNation, Facebook.com/SBNation. If I can get in some... I have no shame for those plugs, but I really think people listening to this, because there will be a college and NFL component with it being the draft, will really enjoy how it is going to be the literal polar opposite, maybe not literal, of like ESPN, Fox, NFL Network type coverage.
I will have to check that out.
Please do.
Thank you to everyone out there who tuned in, and specifically those of you who waited 2 weeks to get our last show. As you've now heard, we put a little bit of extra elbow grease into that one. Went a little bit different with our format. It's not going to be...
You did a great job with it, Ty.
Thank you, and you too. I was really excited about the way it turned out. I know it might not have been everyone's cup of tea, but as you saw last year with our Verby show, we try to mix and match a little bit here in the offseason to keep ourselves young and creative. And
to keep ourselves young?
Yeah.
Oh, man. That ship has sailed, Ty.
But we hope you enjoyed it. We got a lot of really positive feedback, so thank you for that. We do have some other plans for that format in the near term here as the offseason plods forward. So stay tuned for that and much more.
Ty, it was a fun ride. People liked it.
They did.
You like to say keep it balanced, but it was like 99.3% of people seemed to respond positively.
Well, that's good. Good. I'm glad.
I liked it.
All right. Today's show is brought to you by our good friends over at Stamps.com, Dan.
Love it.
Stamps.com. It saves you time and money, which you can use to grow your business. We've used it to grow our business here at the Solid Verbal. You can mail any letter, any package using just your computer, and the printer and the mailman just, picks it up. Like any other mail item you might have out there. Avoid the hassle of the post office. Mail everything from postcards, envelopes, packages, domestic or international. Just go out there and create a Stamps account in minutes online, no equipment to lease, no long-term anything. It's a good deal. They bring all the services of the United States Postal Service right to your fingertips. Buy and print official U.S. postage for any letter, package. Again, any class of mail with just your computer and your printer. They make it Easy. They'll even send you a digital scale, Dan.
Ty, let me tell you something. I was at the post office on Saturday. Yeah, it was on Saturday. I had to wait forever to send some packages to Chicago for the wedding. And I couldn't help but think there had to be a better way to expedite my life. I went on Twitter while I was in line and said, I'm in a long line. Ask me any question about appetizers or Street Fighter 2. Got some real good questions. Ty, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer right now. But short of that, Stamps.com would have saved me an entire hour of my life that I would have spent napping.
You can get the digital scale. They'll help you decide the best class of mail based on your needs, but there's no need to lease any expensive stuff. Again, we use Stamps.com because it makes life easier and you can accomplish the same basic stuff that you could if you went to the post office. Right now, you can jump in on the action as well. You can enjoy Stamps.com with our special offer. It's a 4-week free trial plus postage and get the digital scale. Get all that. No long-term commitments. Just go to Stamps.com. Click on the microphone at the top of the homepage. Type in the code SOLID, SOLID. That is Stamps.com.
Do it.
Your promo code is SOLID. Never go to the post office again. All right, Dan, we are joined now by Josh Norris from NBC and Rotoworld. Going to talk some NFL draft, which, as you know, is coming up at the later part of this week, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So a little bit of football for the fans out there to imbibe. Josh, how are you?
This is an absolute honor, guys. I really appreciate it. I'm great. How are y'all?
We are doing quite well. I got to ask you a very pointed question here as we jump right in and talk about the NFL draft. I know you've been covering this from all angles. I wake up on a Saturday morning. I see that you've charted all like 592 of DeShone Kizer's throws and why they were or weren't a good thing. Why are there so many bad picks?
I think that's a good question. I would say a big part of it is the lack of cohesiveness between the decision makers in terms of scouts and GMs and the front office versus coaches. I think a lot of times we look at the NFL and kind of put it on a pedestal as, organizations that run smoothly, yet there are 32 different ones, and we know absolutely that many of them do not. I mean, you see that in the turnover every single year. And then I think a part of that is also, once there is turnover, the owner goes in like the opposite direction of what the former head coach was, and then that head coach wants to change the entire roster to fit his style. And the lack of patience, I mean, I'm not going to say it shouldn't happen, but I think it absolutely plays into the development of these players once they get in the league.
It's just amazing because pretty much from the end of the college football season straight through now till like early May, because they're doing the draft later, this is all you hear about. It's a constant character study into each of these prospects. And yet it seems more often than not, there are more misses than hits.
Yeah. And I mean, even if you look in the first round, like I kind of ask myself this whenever the first round is complete, like 30% of these guys are going to fail. They're going to be busts. And at the time, everyone is mostly pleased with first rounders. But then even in my head, I'm like, okay, which maybe 10 of these is not going to make it. And at times it's tough to get to 10. And that happens. I mean, look, I actually think one of my favorite part of the draft is seeing which prospects I rank in like the top 50, top 25, whatever, who somehow fall to day 3, round 4 and 5, and then ultimately end up as quality players. I think that's the funnest part of the draft for me.
Josh, where is the biggest chasm between who college football fans are positive is excellent and what NFL people think, or in the other direction, who NFL type scouts, GMs, whoever, writers, draft and analysts think is just wonderful, and college fans are like, really? Him? Where's that chasm?
Yeah. So let's go with that second one. I'm not going to say that college fans necessarily think he's bad, but I mean, he didn't even start for his collegiate program during his final season for most of it. And I would go with Alvin Kamara. The NFL really, really likes Alvin Kamara. In fact, a number of teams are, contemplating Joe Mixon versus Alvin Kamara in their head. And if they don't want to deal with the Joe Mixon situation, which many of them won't, then I think that they pivot over to Alvin Kamara. I mean, this is someone who obviously showed a lot when he had his opportunities and absolutely fit the NFL game in terms of being a passing down back, but also possibly can be more than that. We just don't know. I don't think he's ever touched the ball more than 18 times in a game ever, at least during his collegiate career. On the opposite side of that, it's always a fun question. I would say the easy answer is someone who is highly productive at the college level and then gets questioned on that productivity if it can translate to the NFL. And I think that every year there's a few of those. And this year I would point to Derek Barnett. I really would. Dang it, Tennessee. Derek Barnett, to me, I really like him. Let me start by saying that. I really like Derek Barnett.
You have to say that.
But I'm not sure if he can consistently beat athletic left tackles immediately off the snap in terms of his explosion, in terms of off the 3 steps. I think he has got great bend for his size, and I think his motor is outstanding. But I think frequently he took advantage of heavy-footed offensive linemen in college football. And we even know that, 32 NFL teams aren't pleased with their tackle play. And then you extrapolate that down to the college level, and it's really, really poor. Again, I like Derek Barnett, but in terms of someone who was one of the most productive edge rushers we've ever seen come into the draft, I still think he goes top 15, but I wouldn't rank him there.
I love the fact that Tennessee players are both overrated and underrated. I like that is a strong
Jones,
play.
I think. I think it's very much Jones.
Absolutely, 100% is. When you are looking, at that same transition from college to pro, which position, and I don't know if it's this year specific, but trend-wise, would you say, this type of blank position never would have been evaluated this way 5, 10, 15 years ago. But because of the way both the college game and NFL game have gone, we're seeing a new type of blank be taken seriously. Is there a position that has evolved in the way it's been evaluated, I guess, in a dramatic sense?
Absolutely. And I think it's the 3rd corner spot or the 5th defensive back spot on an NFL team. There are a number of corners that are being looked at as solely slot corners, and that might have a negative connotation to it, but it shouldn't. In fact, one is Colorado's Chidobe Awuzie, who I think has a strong chance of ending up in round 1, and he might solely be a slot guy. And that's perfectly fine. The Tennessee Titans are very interested in Chidobe Awuzie, especially if they trade out of 18, so keep that in mind. And even, 5th, like a 3rd safety spot, right, can still act as your 3rd defensive back. And those guys are just on the field 60% of the time, and to go back one question as well, it makes things even more interesting for a guy like Jabril Peppers. So for me, even though he didn't technically play the spot, I think slot corner might be his best position. He's certainly not going to be an off-ball linebacker, but this whole safety talk, it's difficult because the projection, we haven't really seen him in that area, and the NFL kind of relies on things they've seen in the past. So to me, slot corner might be his best position in the NFL.
You mentioned Jabril Peppers now, some breaking news or developing news about him testing positive for a diluted sample. What does that mean, and what is his status now as he moves into the NFL? Do people like him or not?
Well, I think the people who are most happy about this are Reuben Foster's party, that's for sure, because he's not alone anymore. You know what's interesting, and this isn't football talk. This is just kind of talking about the process. I think it's interesting that Reuben Foster and even prospects in the last 2 years have kind of taken a hold of their narrative in terms of gotten ahead of a story like this. But Jabril Peppers didn't. I think the first prospect in the last 3 years that actually had this kind of news broken via a media source and wasn't a part of it. Because we used to hear all the time about these drug tests being failed at the combine, but we haven't in the last 2 years unless the prospect admitted to it like Reuben Foster did this week. Okay, so I think that in the first round, Peppers has a small or shallow pool in terms of teams that might be super interested. I would throw out the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They need a slot corner and they need a safety. Again, I think a big part of it is we just don't know how successful he will be at his position that he's projected to, because he played a different one during his final, games at Michigan. And I think that's always a difficult proposition. And I'm not sure, especially in this type of corner class and defensive back class, if a team will really feel that comfortable with him in the first round.
Let me shift gears a little bit. You've got Christian McCaffrey as your 11th best overall player, at least on the last set of rankings that I saw. He is not a prototypical running back, if only because he's smaller at like 5'11", around 200 pounds.
Right.
You tend to think that he can be a primary back in the NFL. Why do you feel that way?
And I guarantee you guys will back me up on this, or I might be wrong. Who knows? But I think people will look at that size like you just mentioned and say, well, he's just a passing down back. He's just a back you have to cap his touches. But then generally we talk about these college teams and college prospects projecting to the NFL. And like so often this like quote unquote mythical pro style offense comes up. I mean, you don't get more pro style than Stanford's offense, especially in the running game. He has to run behind power. He has to run up behind multiple tight end sets, multiple fullbacks at times. I mean, all this guy did was run between the tackles 20 plus times a game and showed vision and patience and picked up difficult yards, and then was extremely special when used out in space or getting to the second or third level. Man, I love Christian McCaffrey's game. The more you watch, the more you realize he really can be a primary piece of a passing offense and a running offense. And that's why I have him as a top running back, like you said.
Well, and to Dan's previous question, it does feel like the league has changed a little bit, right? It's gone more passing. Yeah. If you can catch balls out of the backfield, that makes you a little bit more valuable as an asset. And it feels like the league has changed in such a way that Christian McCaffrey now fits in better, despite his smaller stature, than he might have, say, 10 years ago.
So look, like at the very least, you're getting like a Theo Riddick. At the very least, you're getting like a CJ Prosise, a Shane Vereen, right? A guy that you can put in the backfield and then motion out as well. But again, I mean, Theo Riddick's not even a running back, like anytime he's asked to run the ball, he struggles. So you, in an offense that might have already some dynamic personnel groupings, either with 12 personnel or whatever, that they can really dictate matchups to the defense, adding a guy like Christian McCaffrey, where theoretically you could start with two inline tight ends and McCaffrey in single back, and then have your quarterback back up in the shotgun, both of those tight ends split out wide, along with Christian McCaffrey. That changes the entire dynamic of what the offense is presenting to the defense. And I think that's what something McCaffrey offers.
The other story that I know a lot of college fans are interested in is which quarterback goes first / how many quarterbacks go in the first round. The four big names are Deshaun Kaiser, Mitch Trubisky.
Mitchell.
Trubisky, excuse me. Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes, the second, if we're being specific here. I got to be honest, in my heart of hearts, I don't truly feel like any of these guys are truly transcendent enough to justify a first-round pick. But that's just me.
So Dan knows this. This will be the second straight year where I don't think a first-round quarterback exists in the draft. Now, I was obviously wrong with Dak Prescott last year. I was obviously wrong. I mean, the entire NFL was, but I was wrong with that. I didn't like Jared Goff last year. There were many questions that people just didn't bring up. Okay, so then we fast forward to this year. I am not confident at this moment to decide between Deshaun Watson and Mitchell Trubisky as the first quarterback off the board, but I think both go in the top 10. I think the Bears at 3, more and more beat writers are linking the two. And I think it makes sense even with the Mike Lennon signing, because that contract can be whittled down to a 1-year deal basically. And then Ryan Pace gets, his dream of adding a quarterback for the future and not having to rely on Mike Lennon. And then I think the Bills at 10 are absolutely mirroring the blueprint that the Eagles set out last year in terms of their billionaire owner traveling to college campuses to watch 21 and 22-year-olds throw passes against the air. That just doesn't happen. A billionaire owner just doesn't do that. So to answer your question, I think Kaiser's the best one. I really do. I think 2015 Deshaun Kaiser is the best quarterback tape out there. Now, I can't tell you what happened in 2016, but again, I think 2015 DeShone Kizer is the best one out there. But with that said, I wouldn't be surprised if he's the fifth quarterback off the board or if he's the sixth quarterback off the board behind Davis Webb and Nathan Peterman. And I know I'm taking up a bunch of time, but I quickly want to mention Patrick Mahomes and how I have no idea how anyone is confident in his evaluation, either positively or negatively, because we have no comparison of success for him in the NFL. And I just don't know what to do with the guy, honestly.
It seems this year that offensive line is a position group in which nobody's truly impressed with, at least the depth, especially at tackle. Cam Robinson, I know a lot of people like a lot, and for good reason. Ryan Ramczyk has come on, Garrett Bowles from Utah. Is this a thing that has happened because of bad talent this year, or is it just become easier to skip offensive linemen because we're better at evaluating what an NFL first-round offensive lineman must be?
So on a bigger picture, my buddy Eric Stoner actually made this connection, and Dan, this will be close to your heart. But I wonder if some offensive tackle types are now just playing defensive line, like the Tyson Jackson effect.
Interesting.
Eric Armstead.
Yep.
Eric Armstead's an outstanding example of that. You know, someone who was considered a top tackle prospect or recruit and wanted to play defensive line. I mean, you see these guys that are 6'7", 280 pounds, 290 pounds that theoretically could play tackle, but they're playing defensive line. And then you're seeing fewer and fewer athletes at the offensive line spot. This is the least athletic offensive line class we've seen in a long time. I really like Garrett Bowles. I think Garrett Bowles can come in and play right away, but I wouldn't, dismiss anyone that has an opposite opinion, because he's going to be 25 years old as a rookie and only played 1 year at Utah, and actually I would say he's a better run blocker than he is pass protector. It's difficult. I still think they go early because we saw what Matt Khalil and Riley Reif and Russell Okung got paid. And the NFL, like I said, not every team is comfortable with their starters. I still think at least one goes in the top 20 and maybe a couple, but it's certainly not a position of strength in this class at all.
Is the NFL at a point, at least with conventional wisdom, that they're willing to roll the dice on potential with guys? It just seems this year, especially with like a 1 year starter. Malik Hooker, I don't believe, has started for more than a year. Obviously, Mitchell Trubisky. You mentioned Garrett Bowles.
Marshawn
Lattimore, absolutely. Is it a situation where we are sort of not considering what the NFL does when they look at these guys, that multiple years of starting and developing and proving themselves against different types of players may not be as valuable when perhaps they don't, they haven't been hit as much. Alvin Kamara hasn't been hit as much, whereas Christian McCaffrey has 6,000 touches. Are we underestimating how the NFL approaches this?
Yeah, and John Allen has, 4 years of work, and
right.
Dalvin Cook has 3 years of work and 3 shoulder operations to go along with it. I mean, there are questions in so many different directions of this group. You mentioned it. There's a sample size of some of them. There's the medical red flags of others. There's the age question with others. I mean, it's a look. Anytime you talk about potential and ceiling and everything like that, it's difficult to understand if it's about athleticism, if it's about potential. I struggle coming up with those terms. To me, all that I care about is how someone succeeds on the field. I don't even care about the negatives. It's just like where they went on the field and if that can work in the NFL. And even a number don't have a full athletic profile. I mean, Leonard Fournette is one, and Ezekiel Elliott was one last year. Corey Davis as well. There's just a ton of questions, and I think that just discuss it. And this isn't answering your question at all, but this is just how, on the Monday or Tuesday before the draft, we have no clue what's going to happen starting pick number 2.
All right. So Josh Norris, you're hired as a GM of Team X, the new Raiders, let's say, whenever they eventually move to Las Vegas in 2020.
Suburban Connecticut. Yeah.
You are the new GM of whatever team. What is your evaluation process? Take inside the Josh Norris radar map. How do you balance in-game stuff versus workouts versus, this aspirational P word potential?
Okay. how much time do we have? So there's a few different ways. I really love how the Packers handle the visits process. They bring in for their top 30 prospects who are most likely seventh rounders or undrafted free agents. They treat it as recruiting, basically. And I mean, if you think about it, like if you're a late round guy coming out of who knows where, Middle Tennessee State, Youngstown State, whatever, and one team is showing you more love than another, you are absolutely more likely to sign with them once the draft is over in that 1 hour window than a team that, you haven't heard of since they came and visited your practice in the fall. So I loved how the Packers handle the visit. I absolutely employ Zach Whitman of 3 Sigma Athlete, who does great work on composite scores. I think athleticism at certain positions is vital. I think it's vital at edge and defensive linemen because those are some of the true one-on-one matchups on the field. And if you have an athletic advantage, then it really, it's key. It gives you a leg up. But also we can eliminate the non-NFL athletes at their specific positions and stay away from them. And look, I more than anything focus on where a player succeeds, like I've said before, because everyone can go out there and watch a game and see where a guy fails and see the negatives. That's the easiest thing. But in order to allow your team to win and help your team to win, you have to put these players, these prospects, in an area where they succeed. And so finding the positives is the only thing that matters.
To that end, I guess, next logical question, if you're, again, still the GM, you haven't been fired yet, what is the deepest what is the deepest position out there in this year's draft class? Where is it the shallowest?
The deepest is tight end. And it's an interesting one to discuss because tight end is the slowest developing position in the NFL, even more than quarterback it is. I mean, so many of these players, once they get to the NFL, fail to help their first team in their first contract. I mean, we see so many, produce on their second deals and with their second or third teams. Martellus Bennett, Gary Barnidge, Jared Cook, Delaney Walker. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And everyone talks about the 2 top tight ends in this class, and I will too, and O.J. Howard and David Njoku. And I think those guys are plug and play in line, or if you want to detach them as well. But I would be a bit nervous to take them super early just because of how slow developing it is, although we've seen both do everything that you want out of the tight end spot. Then after that, you have all your different types. I mean, I love Evan Ingram. I'm sure you guys do too. I love George Kittle out of Iowa. Heck, I'll throw out Eric Stywart out of Drake as a third day pass catching tight end who might go in like the third to fourth round in other years. Tight end is absolutely the deepest spot this year. And the weakest, I would go to offensive lineman and offensive tackle. In fact, I think you'll see some third round picks spit on a guy like Julian Davenport out of Bucknell, Jalen Ware out of, I believe, Alabama State, and Brad Seaton out of Villanova. These guys have gotten a ton of looks during the prospect visits and workouts and all that stuff. And I think teams will see them as swing tackles early on and hopefully develop them into starting tackles down the line.
I guess the classic dilemma now, it's right up there, I guess, with chicken versus the egg. What should the Browns do?
Yeah. Well, so much more informed people than me say that Jimmy Garoppolo will not be traded, and I'm not sure I would trade for him anyway. So we've ruled that out. Okay. I do not like any of these quarterbacks. So, and I don't like AJ McCarron either as prospect. So we're kind of screwed at quarterback, if we're being perfectly honest. So we continue to load up. I love how they handled the offensive line because rather than pairing, a young quarterback with a great wide receiver, I think now pairing them with a great offensive line is the much better approach. I think you absolutely go Myles Garrett at 1, and then you find another player who can, instantly impact, who's not, a year away from starting on the field, whether it be O.J. Howard, who I just discussed, to run more 12 personnel, whether it be Christian McCaffrey, if he's on the roster or if he's on the board. I'm not sure if they would even take a running back at 12. But more importantly, I would find some cohesiveness between Hugh Jackson, who's absolutely an old school football mind, versus this apparent or I guess mythical forward-thinking analytics department that takes everything into consideration, and maybe they don't connect on every decision. I think we saw that last year with the Cody Kessler situation.
So I'm of the mind, and this might be just me, but I love doing the deep dives on what certain teams take and where value is. And I'm of the mind that offensive skill players are not necessarily worth first-round value, especially if you're a team trying to improve. So if somebody is of a similar mind, who is available in the second or third round, like second or third round wide receiver, running back, tight end, that you feel like, even though they're not Dalvin Cook, Christian McCaffrey, Corey Davis, Mike Williams, guys like that you feel like the drop-off isn't particularly steep and can contribute pretty close to right away?
Well, I'm so glad I get to talk about Taywan Taylor. I love Taywan Taylor. Taywan Taylor reminds me a lot of Kendall Wright coming out of Baylor. Sure, I probably obsessed over Kendall Wright a bit too much because he certainly didn't hit his stride in the NFL. But if you go back and watch his game there, he's awesome. Taywan, creates separation early in his routes. He sustains it. He wins after the catch. And despite being under 6 feet tall, still even try to go up and get it and win in those contested situations. I wouldn't be surprised if he's, a third round pick. But I think Taywan Taylor is awesome. Carlos Henderson is a really, really fun player. If you're looking for someone that potentially could be used in a similar fashion as Tyreek Hill during the rookie year, I would throw out Carlos Henderson from Louisiana Tech. I mean, he is a stud after the catch. Just like wastes little movement, puts one foot in the dirt, and gets upfield immediately. Was easily the best in that area last season in all of college football. And again, I would throw out Evan Ingram. Like, I'm not sure if every NFL team will know how to use him because the NFL can be dumb at times. But to me, if you just put him in the slot as a big slot receiver, and I even think he's a better blocker than people give him credit for. And Evan Ingram will be there in round 2 most likely.
Are we getting any closer? And I know some teams are able to do this and some teams have struggled to figuring out what to do with tweener types. Like, I mean, you mentioned Jabril Peppers on defense, that he's sort of a jack of many trades, but not necessarily a master of one. Offensively, we've seen players recently, my heart is with DeAnthony Thomas, and he's never really found a consistent role. This year we have a player like Curtis Samuel, who has sort of succeeded in the slot, running certain kind of routes and succeeded with certain kind of carries. Are we any closer to finding roles and finding appropriate value for these types of players?
I really think it's all about the landing spot. I really do. Because theoretically, someone like Cordero Patterson should find a role in the NFL, and he just didn't outside of, as a kick returner with the Minnesota Vikings. It's tough. And Curtis Samuel's a good example because a number of teams are looking at him as a slot receiver. A number of teams are looking at him as a running back. I think he's certainly more comfortable with the ball in his hands, but I think his future is kind of in the slot. I don't know if I have a great answer for you. I really don't. But it certainly seems like, and I can't give you a list of all of them off the top of my head, that with so much turnover at offensive coordinator, at head coach, that only a certain number of these offenses are willing to keep a role player like that, even though the NFL is made up of role players. And I'll have to, I think we kind of obsess over air back guys that succeed in space. I'll throw out there's some Josh Ferguson love last year, which was absolutely crazy. It's the same way we obsess over SEC safeties that are in the box and just hit people really hard. It's those are the two things that draft Twitter fall in love with. And so we might not realize that, look, these guys can only dress 5 wide receivers on a Sunday and 3 running backs. And does a team really want to use one of those spots on someone that sure might be able to help on special teams, but might also limit them if someone goes down with an injury as well?
Josh, which Patriot League player do you see as a sure thing at the next level? No, I did. I said a name earlier. Isn't Drake in the Patriot League? Drake is not in the Patriot League, sir. I don't know what they're in. They're not in the Patriot League. Okay, actually, there is a player I want to know about who does play in the Northeast, just because I like watching him play a lot. And he seems like he could be a top 15, top 20 type pick. I also have a soft spot for Temple because I just like shouting the word Owls a lot.
Yeah.
Hassan Reddick is somebody who, if people have watched college football, especially when Temple's played against better teams, he's really shined. What is it about his game specifically that you feel like, even from, a school that doesn't have a rich football background, he can succeed pretty quickly in the NFL?
What's funny is a few years ago, I really liked Tahir Whitehead more than anyone else.
Mm-hmm.
And I think their projection is very similar in that, well, first of all, Hassan Reddick's story is incredible and his transition is incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, he came, and you guys know this, came on to Temple as like a corner/safety. In fact, I asked him about this at the Senior Bowl. He practiced a few times with Robbie Anderson at corner and at safety. And obviously Robbie Anderson is now a receiver for the Jets. But then he went over and like gained a bunch of weight and rushed up the edge. And when he does pass rush, I mean, he's super athletic. I wouldn't say that would be his primary move, but he can certainly help a team in that way. And then he plays off the ball as well. I would say his easy transition is like that off-ball linebacker spot. A team might use him as an Anthony Barr type player, or if they want to put him on the line, maybe a Julian Peterson type player, or they can just stick him on the inside like Jamie Collins if they want to. I know there's like a bunch of big names I just mentioned that are really, really good players, but I think Hassan Reddick is a really, really good player. I want to transition this quickly to another prospect who I don't think is receiving enough love, who is kind of in that, Deion Jordan mold.
Sure.
Along with Julian Peterson, and that's Tyus Bowser out of Houston. I really think Tyus Bowser ends up in the first round, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's in the teens as well.
What's your favorite draft buzzword? Because you hear like football IQ and arm talent. I think it was Mike Mayock, the legendary Mike Mayock, who once used loose hips. Do you have any go-to phrase that you like?
There was a time when people were critiquing prospects during like weigh-in, and they were talking about their bubble, and by their bubble, that's their belly, and like their ad region, but to me, that's taking it a bit far, guys. Like, I don't need to know about someone's bubble. So.
The bubble, okay.
Love the bubble.
Give us some sleepers in this year's draft. Some names. You've already thrown a few out there, but who are some others that you think fall into the sleeper category because of injury or a small school or coaching or luck or a whole variety of different factors? So
I'm actually still remembering a question that you asked a few questions ago, and I do want to mention this. This will apply to one of my names. If I'm building a team, the most important part to me is pass protecting with 5. It's blocking with 5. It's pass rushing with 4. It's winning the turnover differential, and then it's creating big plays. All right. So if we're talking about someone that can create big plays, Tariq Cohen out of North Carolina A&T is like a super, super fun prospect. I think he's 5'6" or 5'7" and 170 pounds. So who even knows if he's going to get drafted? But if you watch him, like, he doesn't care which way the end zone is. He's just going to run away from everyone and evade. It's like growing up, I played NFL Fever. Do you remember that game for the Xbox with the back controller with Peyton Manning on the cover, I think? And my buddy and I would play as Michael Vick and run all the way back to my own end zone and then just juke everyone and then the 100 yards to the other end zone. And that's like how Tariq Cohen plays football. So maybe he did the same thing growing up. I would also throw in Elijah McGuire from Louisiana Lafayette. If there's going to be a prospect who I would suggest drafting in the 5th or the 6th round that might turn into this year's Jordan Howard, it would be Elijah McGuire. He's a runner and receiver type. I think he can be on the field in all situations. And I'll end on Xavier Woods out of Louisiana Tech. Xavier Woods is a really, really good prospect, lined up wherever Louisiana Tech needed him to. He's a very good athlete as well. And he is absolutely someone who I could see winding up in the 3rd round, even though some people don't believe he can find that spot in quickly, just because we all these other Michigan guys are being discussed. Jake Butt and Jabril Peppers. I actually think Chris Wormley is the best Michigan prospect in this class and deserves to be drafted in the top 32.
Josh, which Ninja Turtle or Ninja Turtle character do you think is most NFL ready, given their both physical and mental makeup?
I would probably say Raphael, because Raphael is he's the most confident in his ability. I understand Leonardo is the leader, whatever, right? I think we all agree that Leonardo was not the best. Okay. I think Donatello might get in his head a little bit, and I understand everything will be well thought out, but at times he can be a bit soft. I think if Michelangelo was going to be in the NFL, he'd be like Pat McAfee or someone, like a punter, right?
Yes.
And then I really do. I could see Raphael being like DeMonte Casey this year, like a corner on the outside who just wants to come up and be aggressive and tackle you down your throat. So I would say Raphael definitely, even though the locker room might not love him.
See, I was going to go Rocksteady early on, but I think Rocksteady is better built for an NFL era that is sort of bygone at this point. I might go Bebop. I could see Bebop being a Gronk type, where there's just a certain inherent aggression to a warthog over the middle. I don't know. Ty, do you have a thought?
I'm just wondering if Josh knew that question was coming in advance.
He did not. He 100% did not.
So there were many pictures of me growing up dressing as a Ninja Turtle. I have never thought about this question. Maybe I've dreamt about it or something. My two worlds coming together. But I was surprised at myself having one at the ready right then.
I like it. I'm looking at the cast of characters right now. Krang does not look mobile enough in that suit.
See, I don't know these people you're talking about right now. Like, I only knew the four, and obviously Splinter.
Krang was.
But I don't remember any others.
Krang was the brain inside of the large robot.
Guys, can I ask you this question?
Please.
Okay. I'm not talking Power Rangers or Ninja Turtles or something like that. But like, what secondary show with like superpowers did you like the most? Because for me, do you remember like Beetleborgs? Like I was a big fan of Beetleborgs.
I'm looking at it now. I never watched.
You never watched Beetleborgs?
I didn't watch Beetleborgs. I was going to answer Captain Planet.
Yeah, but I think that's a little bit...
is that too mainstream?
More high profile than I'm looking for here. Yeah, that's too mainstream.
The only one that keeps coming to mind for me is Thundercats, but I don't know if that qualifies
either. Oh, that's
either.
definitely mainstream, I think.
Yeah.
I'm younger than y'all, I guess.
Oh, Beetleborgs. I mean, he didn't throw out Digimon. Have you heard of Digimon?
I've heard of Digimon.
Oh, I love Digimon! Yeah, I was always a Digimon person. That's a good one. That's a good one.
Man. All right, I think this is a natural ending place, Ty. I think we got in all pertinent information.
All right. Again, follow him, conveniently named on Twitter, at Josh Norris. That's Josh and Norris. Follow his draft coverage with Rotoworld and NBC Sports. Josh, it's great to have you on the show at long last, and we'll certainly have to do it again sometime soon.
Absolutely, guys. I really do appreciate it. Have a good one.
All right, Dan. Again, that's Josh Norris, NBC Sports, Rotoworld, very affable gentleman. I appreciate having him on.
Oh, Josh is great. Did you see that he went through the full... I know Rich Eisen runs the 40. I want to say Josh went through a number of the Combine events this year.
How did he do?
As I watched him, Ty, not great.
No.
Actually, you know what? All things considered, I saw him do the 40. I saw him do some shuttle stuff. I would say he did better than I thought he would as just, an average, just like you or I, 29, 31, I don't know how old he is, your old male. I thought he did pretty good, all things considered. Doing it cold is especially difficult. Is there a specific event, Ty, that you feel like you could punch above your weight class in the Combine?
Probably some sort of throwing drill.
Okay.
Yeah.
I could throw a nice football? You throw a nice ball?
I do, yeah. We did it. You remember we did this a while ago?
It's true. I know we did. I'm just,
yeah.
Did I throw it farther than you?
No.
You had, and I had the punt? I don't remember where
I think you might have beaten me on the punt.
Okay.
I should really go back and look at this.
It's terrible footage.
I'm pretty sure, though. Yeah, it's definitely like standard definition or a cut below. And I'm pretty sure that the throwing was my strongest one. So I could, if there were any, it would be throwing, any kind of throwing drill.
physically, I'm going to be below average pretty much everywhere. I'm an okay athlete, but I just, in terms of what other people that are like 6'1", 174 pounds can do, I'm not going to be there. But, Ty, I feel like I would ace the sort of interview portion of the combine.
Right.
I can BS with the best of them, Ty. I am
aware
that you want to hear. Like, you want to ask me about the Nikkei? Sure.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the Nikkei, Ty. You want to talk about the Cincinnati Reds? I'm with you. I'm ready to go. So, yeah, I'm a natural leader. I'm ambitious. I think I'm great. I wouldn't be in this league if I didn't think I were great.
Also, any kind of classroom event would probably be more our speed. You know, the Wonderlic. The things that really have nothing to do with athletic prowess,
right?
Those are the things that we would do best in.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think I really could, look somebody square in the eye, a firm handshake, and I could really tell, an assistant GM what he or she wants to hear. I'm right there, Ty.
I would start off by saying, excuse me, Mr. Norris, since he's the new GM of the Raiders. These days, it might get a little difficult to stay informed. It doesn't have to be thanks to the Texture app.
Oh, shoot. Good call.
Texture app. Now, listen. Texture's been a friend of the Verbal for a long time. Go and check it out at texture.com/solid. You get a 14-day free trial. I'm not saying you have to do it, but just go and check it out. If you like to read stuff, if you're into fine works of literary arts, as we are, and magazines and whatnot, please go to texture.com/solid and at least see what they're all about. They've got over 200 magazines at the ready. They offer access to in-depth interviews and articles from the convenience of your phone or tablet. All right, so it's a little bit like Netflix, but only for publications. Don't have a million of them laying around. Subscribe to Texture. It's normally $9.99 a month, but if you sign up now, you can get it for free for 14 days. You can have all those publications delivered to you digitally. Save yourself the paper and the mess. They've also got daily recommendations and exclusive interactive features. They make it easy to enjoy the articles that you want to read because they're searchable. Searchable.
Yeah.
Which if you got like 10 magazines on the end table, you can't type something into a search bar and find what you're looking for. You got to page through.
Yep.
It's a laborious process to do that, Dan. Texture makes it searchable, so you can find what you like. You can check out old issues, bonus video content, everything from Sports Illustrated to Esquire and Forbes. It's all available. It was one of Apple's 2016 iPad apps of the year.
Texture.
Texture.com/solid. 14-day free trial if you go to texture.com/solid. texture.com/solid.
Ty, I have a question. I think I know the answer to this question, but it just struck me that this is basically out of college, and you can make your jokes about how, getting paid in Bagman, top players getting paid in colleges, recruits, whatever. But this is the first job, right? This is the first out of college entering the workforce job for everybody that's going to be drafted, presumably, right?
Right.
So my question to you, Ty, is, I think I know the answer, but your current mystery day job is, you've been there for a long time, correct?
Indeed.
Indeed, you have been. So you never had did you have a different job out of college, or is this straight out of college, you've progressed through your mystery day job?
This is my first full-time job. I've had numerous other jobs in the summertime and whatnot, but yeah, full-time, yes.
At any point early on, because I had a different career path than you, at any point early on, were you like the young throw to do errands? Like, did you have a ton of like dumb busy work that you had to do? And I don't want to get you in trouble with your job, but I'm saying, did you have like typical first early 22 years old out of college? Did you have those like typical busy work nonsense situations?
I wouldn't simplify it to the degree that any of it falls into that category. I would just say that, as a lot of people find when you jump into the workforce right out of college, you find yourself doing a lot of what I would consider junior level work. Sure. And so it's a lot of stuff like that. Never anything I would consider busy work.
When you look back on that time, do you feel like you did a good job, not at your actual job, but of being a new fresh face in the workforce? Were your shirts ironed? Did you pack yourself some lunch? Were you always showing up on time? Did you ever cut out early?
think I was doing my part.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not much of a rule breaker as it relates to my steady source of income. No, I usually try to look presentable.
I had so much dumb, my first job was a paid internship for a production company. So I was picking up lunches for like the entire office. It was a production company, movies and TV, and actually some theater stuff. But I had so much just grunt work, Ty. I was delivering scripts. I took the father of one of the main producers at the company. I took him on errands, one of which included going with him to buy a jockstrap.
Oh, wow.
At a sporting goods store because he lived in Mexico and could not get jockstraps in Mexico. I had to do a lot, Ty. And it kind of bums me out that you never had to live that life because it was not that fun. I delivered a script to Kyle Gass of Tenacious D, though.
Oh, yeah?
It was that. I met Chris Hardwick.
Okay.
It's not all that interesting, but yeah, it was kind of a bummer of like a 6 months that I left and got another job. But yeah, so it's just interesting when I think back on it, which is what 3-4 years ago now.
Yeah.
To think about that, these soon-to-be NFL players, this is their first full-time gig, and they're not going to have to do any of that stuff.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably never.
No, I think they'll probably 75% of them will actually have a job that is, like the NCAA commercial says, in something other than sports.
Be trying to start a podcast in 2020. Yeah.
That's exactly right. But yeah, different life, Ty. Different life.
All right. Well, fun show. We will be back next Wednesday. Mm-hmm. This, again, is a little bit of an early drop this week because the draft starts on Thursday night. You need some time to download and digest what Josh had to say, but do throw him a follow at Josh Norris on Twitter and look for his draft coverage, again, with Rotoworld and NBC Sports. Dan, best of luck on your live show. I'll watch. Yeah,
I appreciate that. Should we tease who we're having on the show next week?
We can.
Okay, I won't say her name. And we're going to go out on this, Ty, and we'll sign off.
Right.
But she's a current Supreme Court justice. So that's all I can say. That's all I can say, Ty. No,
on that note,
yeah.
For that guy over there, Dan Rubenstein, my name's Ty Hildebrand. Thanks again for tuning in. Subscribe at iTunes.com/solidverbal. Catch you all next week and stay solid.
Peace.